Hey everybody, happy Valentine's Day, officially. It is February 14th. We are here in Kentucky and it's fairly mild outside, about 56 degrees currently, but it may be a happy Valentine's, but it's not a happy bees in the weeds video. So, long story short, I've suffered quite a few losses again. The colonies that you see without a wrap are dead outs. I came out here a few days ago and systematically checked every single colony, assessed their food stores, and just to see if they're alive, and several of them were not. And so I've got about 12 losses so far this year. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. The two Lysin polystyrene hives are still alive. This one here is actually doing phenomenal. But all these others that no longer have the Vivaldi board on them or the bee cozy wrap are dead. And so if you see bees going in and out of one like this, they're robbing it. So, does that suck? Yeah, it does. What happened? Well, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. The good news is I still have, well, so far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 colonies that I'm hoping make it through. You know, we're middle of February here. We should have gotten past the vast majority of our harsh conditions here. I'm not saying this is the reason for the losses, but we did have an absolutely brutal stretch of cold weather here in Kentucky where it was down into the single digits. I'm sure many of you in the United States were impacted by Winter Storm Fern. We were very, very cold here for a long period of time. Do I think that contributed? Absolutely. Do I think that's the sole reason? No, I don't. So like I said, we'll go back in the shop and we'll kind of talk through maybe what happened. I've got to get the UTV out here and get these colonies loaded up and back into the shop. I plan on doing some necropsy assessments, which is whatever, a fancy word for autopsy for honeybees. And several of them, and you'll see, basically whittled down to just a small cluster ball of bees that were left with the queen inside. And so we'll talk about some of the possible reasons and explanation on what happened to those bees. I did reach out to Kent Williams and asked his opinion, because that's always a smart thing to do. And I'll let you know what he told me, what his thoughts were, and what he thinks might have happened. So, is it sad? Yeah. Am I discouraged? No. This happened to me last year. I lost 50% of my bees, and I'm on track to lose the same, maybe even a little bit more. While that's the national average, that is certainly not what I aspire to have here. I specifically asked Kent about overwintering singles and checked to see if and what I could potentially be doing wrong. And he gave me good feedback on that. And so we'll discuss that later in the video. But right now, I just want to get these colonies that don't have wraps on, get them back into the barn, and we'll do some assessments. So here we go. Well, it is quite muddy and sloppy out here with all this snow melting and ice. We're forecasted to have some 70-degree temperatures here in the next day or so. So this is a little trick I learned from my friend Laura, to use a Pro Nuke to feed pollen sub. And you can pick up your Ultra B pollen sub. That's what I use at Man Lake. Go ahead and take a second to talk about my discount code. So I guess there were some issues with it being copied to numerous coupon sites. And so Man Lake reached out to me and said, we have to change your code because it's been used like over 2,000 times, etc. I don't really understand why that's a bad thing. But nevertheless, I've reached out to them and asked, what their advice is or what we should do. And I think they're going to give me a new code to use. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you guys know what it is so you can still save your 10% off all your products. But let's go ahead and get this open. I'm going to set this down a second. Okay. So here's what your pollen sub looks like. And all I do on the Pro Nukes is just take those two little doors off right there. Take the lid off. And that's it. Dump your pollen sub in here. Just a fair amount. It's like that, like so. Okay. Then put your lid back on, which keeps the rain out of it. And that's why you use a Pro Nuke to feed pollen sub. It's because you don't want your pollen sub to get wet. And then I'll just come over here and grab one of these cinder blocks. And I'll put it right on top. Now obviously that keeps the wind from knocking this over because it's pretty lightweight. And that's it. The bees will easily find that pollen sub, and there'll be tons of them in there tomorrow. And the one thing to note about pollen sub versus open feeding syrup, pollen substitute will not set off robbing like open feeding syrup will. You absolutely do not want to put syrup this close to all your hives. You will set off a robbing frenzy, but pollen sub will not do that. So it's perfectly fine to put pollen substitute outside in your apiary right next to your colonies. And obviously there's a lack of natural pollen available. If there was natural pollen available here, they would completely ignore this and they would go get the natural pollen. But with this being February 14th, there's very little, if not no, pollen available for them to find. So they will start using this in the colonies that are starting to rear brood. And it's that time of year. The queens were past the winter solstice. The queens are starting to lay. And they're going to continue to ramp up until we hit our nectar flow in, April, May timeframe. So providing them with a pollen source is going to help these colonies rear brood. So anyway, let's go ahead and get these hives back in the pole barn, and we'll chat some more. Okay, we're back in the shop here. I've brought in a couple of the hives, a couple more. Like I said, I think the current total losses is around 13 colonies. I'm praying that's it, and the rest seem to be doing fine. I've been checking them, and plenty of food, queen right, everything appears to be pretty good for that. So come in here, like I said, and we'll go ahead and do a little honeybee autopsy and take a look and see if we can figure out what happened to these colonies. I suspect it's one of two things, either queen failure or, of course, Varroa mites. One of the colonies I peeked into with the little ball on top, I did see the queen in there in the middle of the ball dead. Generally speaking, from my understanding, from what I've talked to a lot more seasoned beekeepers, if the queen is in there, it's more likely a Varroa kill. And of course, it's not the Varroa itself, it's the diseases and the viruses that the Varroa destructor mite vectors. deformed wing virus being one of them. So let's go ahead and open these and take a look and see if we can figure out what happened. Because the one thing I can tell you is they did not starve to death. A lot of the frames, and I'll show you here even on this one, look like this. So plenty of room for the queen to lay, and just absolute gobs and gobs of honey. Plenty on that one too. Some of the, and this isn't, this I've already manipulated. This was not the frames that were in this particular dead out. I pulled the frames that were completely stuffed with honey, and I'm putting those inside the colonies that are still alive. If they have an empty frame in there, I pulled it and I put a full frame of honey, just because we're getting close to that time period, late February, early March, not quite into April, but March is like, and February are peak starvation periods for colonies. So I may lose them to queen failure, and I may lose them to Varroa mites, and that's disappointing enough, but by God, they're not going to starve to death. So let me bring you in here so you can see this small little cluster that remained. So that is what's left of this particular hive. And I don't see the queen right away. Let's see if I can. But she very well could be in between the two frames here, and that's what I'm going to take a look and find. Just looking at the bees, I don't see any dispersal mites, otherwise known as phoretic mites. But we are going to do an alcohol wash and a little honeybee autopsy here. Even though it's probably not half a cup of bees to get a full 300 bee count. I mean, just looking at it, there's not 300 bees there, right? But we're going to take a look, nevertheless, and see if we get any mites on the... man, that's really propolised in there. Any mites on the actual wash. Now that frame's empty. I'm guessing this weighs about 40 pounds. It was pretty heavy. A little bit of honey on there. Nothing but cells upon cells. So they definitely were not honey or nectar bound to where the queen ran out of room. All honey, open cells here. Honey, open cells. Now, there's quite a few dead bees on the bottom board, and I'm going to do my best to try to scrape some of those off and get them inside the alcohol wash so we can try to get a better idea of a mite load, if that's what took them out. Like I said before, I don't 100% know. I don't know. I'm just taking you through kind of what I'm thinking might have happened. Few bees on that one, but another frame half stuffed with honey. Knock these bees off. Let me go ahead. Stick this frame in here. This is what I've been doing, is frames that are stuffed and full of honey like this. I'm just kind of stacking them up here and I'm giving them back to the healthy colonies. All right, so here we go. Let's take a look. Try to spread this without all those bees. Of course, some of them are going to fall down, but I'd love to see if the queen's in here. Try to be careful. All right. No, the queen's not in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put some alcohol in here. I think that's enough. You can always reuse this alcohol too. It's not like a once and done, one and done type thing. But I'm gonna try to put as many of these bees, see if I see the queen. Yeah, see, I don't see her there either. I don't see her there. If the queen is not in that little cluster, then it's possible that it was queen failure. And a lot of times you'll see where they've turned laying worker too. But, oh, there she is. I think that's her, right? Maybe. Yep, there's the queen. Okay. All right. Ooh. So she is. So I'm leaning towards, I don't know if you can see her that well. There's her green dot on her back. But I'm leaning towards a Varroa kill. But let's find out. Let's see. Now I'm gonna save this queen because she's still got all those good stinky pheromones, and you can crush them up and use that for a lure, swarm lure. So don't just throw your dead queens away. They still have value. Look at that. I mean, they were completely surrounded by honey. Completely surrounded. Let's see here. All right, I'm gonna try to scrape some of these bees off. Get the rest of these frames out of the way. Actually, might be easier if I just pull this deep off. I mean, look at this next frame, guys. I'm just trying to drive the point home that they didn't starve, okay? All the colonies look like this. They're just picking them up. They're all very heavy. All right. There's probably a couple hundred dead bees on the bottom board. Because I use those slatted racks and they're actually screwed to the Apiary, it's going to be hard for me to get all those bees. But I will try to get some. I'm just trying to get as many of these as I can. And I wonder if I can set this up there. I wonder if I can maybe knock some out here. And they're like, yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. We might get 300 bees after all. A big old beetle in there. All right, let's I'm gonna try to gently might be the best, trying to figure out the best way to scoop these up in here. Probably of course I don't have a piece of paper, do I? I think I've got a calendar over here. Oh yeah, here's, this might be easier. I hope your colonies are doing well. Coming strong. You know, we're close to being out of winter. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. We're definitely getting there. This is starting to look like several hundred. Now, one thing you can look for, and just looking at some of these bees, I'm checking to see if their abdomens are shortened, are shrunk, because that can be an indicator of, there, that's enough bees. That could be an indicator of deformed wing virus B. You know, obviously you're going to see the deformed wings, but another thing that you can look for is where their actual abdomen looks like it's just been shrunken up, like it's shriveled up. And you just spin and swirl and shake for 30, 45 seconds. You know, take your time. Don't get in a big hurry with this stuff. Trying to see if I see any mites. There's a hive beetle. Oh, where'd my queen go? Oh no! Where did I set her down? I thought I set her over here. Like an idiot, I probably swept her up in here. Did she fall? I thought I set her over here. See, this is what happens when you try to record videos and you get distracted. I thought I set her off to the side here, but now I'm pretty sure I swept her up inside all these bees. Oh, well. C'est la vie, right? All right, let's see if we got any mites here. Guys, I'm seeing 0 mites. 0 mites. And I've seen other beekeepers do this necropsy, and it just looks like a mite bomb on the bottom of this. I'm not seeing any. 0. I can't believe I didn't. I swept the queen up. Gosh, you idiot. Did she fall on the ground? No, I wouldn't be that lucky, would I? Zero mites. 0. Big fat 0. So what happened? I don't know. Is it possible that... I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here, so if any of you smart people out there know, let me know. Is it possible that the colony was pretty small going into winter? And I mean, the queen was in there. Did she fail? Maybe. Certainly possible. And if she failed, that cluster would just continue to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink, right? And the mantle, at a certain point, would not be able to generate enough warmth inside to keep the mantle and any brood, if there is brood in there. It looks like there wasn't. Because that's the other thing I didn't point out is you didn't see a single capped brood cell. Nothing. Not a single one. So I think I think it's obvious that the colony shrank over time, right? I think that's factual. And it got to the point where the cluster size was so small, they froze to death. So ultimately the cause of death would be they all froze to death. They didn't starve. That's for darn sure. I think they all froze to death. And so we had that brutal stretch here during Winter Storm Fern. And I mean, it was brutal. And I think that's what happened. I think that's exactly what happened. I'm going to dump these bees out. Now I can reuse this, and I don't need to strain it because there's not a single mite in there. There's not a single mite in there. Not one. So, queen failure? Sure. These colonies looked pretty good going into winter. I'm not going to say they were like behemoths, like just absolutely boiling with bees, no. But I mean 6, 7 frames of bees, yeah. So, I don't know, a little bit of a head scratcher, and I have a feeling we're gonna look at one more here. I have a feeling that this other one's going to be similar. We'll see. I don't know for sure. But if that's the case, what the heck's going on? Why did these colonies fail? Unless, again, it was queen failure, because if it was mites, then I didn't see a single bee with shriveled up wings or nothing, not a single mite. So I mean, you tell me. I don't know. Let's go take a look at this next one. Yeah, it's heavy. All right, so this looks familiar, doesn't it? I'm gonna bring you in here, and let's take a close-up look at these bees. All right. I don't see the queen yet, but I suspect she's in there. Abdomens look normal to me. Look at the wings. I'm looking at the wings. Pretty good to me. I'm not seeing K-wing or, I mean, look. I mean, their wings look good. They're not shriveled up, which would be a sign of the deformed wing virus. All right, let's wash them, shall we? So I'll pull the frames and you're going to see how much honey's in this thing. But again, I don't think we'll see any brood. And I know colonies can and do go completely broodless during the winter at times. But that's just an empty frame. This one looks like it's got a little bit of honey on one side. Yep, empty on that side. Plenty of honey. No eggs in these cells, guys. Nothing. Plenty of honey on the outside, nothing on the inside. Empty cells. All right, now we're getting closer to the cluster here. I see like 5 capped cells right here. Yeah, there's bee larvae in there. A lot of bees stuck in the cells here. And they will do that to help generate warmth. If you can see on the camera, hopefully. Got their heads stuck down in there, trying to generate enough warmth. Again, I think they froze to death because the cluster size just got too small. No sign of the queen there. Look at that. Just looking for eggs or brood. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. All right. Let's see if we can be careful here. See if I see the queen. No. She's likely in here. If she is in here. And she could easily fall down and drop and I'd miss her and that's that. So just because I don't find the queen doesn't mean there wasn't one in here. Try to push these out without. Okay. Just gotta break up that propolis and yeah, some are gonna fall. Hopefully not her, but all right. I'm looking for her. I don't see her. Not in there. She could be in here. Let's... Nope. God, look at that. Look at that frame, guys. I mean, you couldn't fit any more honey in that. Yeah, I don't see her. I don't see her there. Let's check this last frame here. This is the non-fun side of beekeeping. Going through dead outs. All right, is she anywhere on here? I gotta get it lower so I can see, guys. Yeah. These, I mean, they're, again, wings look great, abdomens look great. I don't see any obvious signs of sickness. Didn't find the queen. She's probably on the bottom board. Well, let's take a look at that, shall we? Go ahead and pull this, put this back in. She's not on that frame either. Let's pull this deep off. Ew. Yeah, several hundred bees dead on the bottom. I'm gonna shake some out here. Okay, I think that's good enough. And what I do is I end up taking these outside and I hose them off. I was just going to see if I could spot the queen real quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time looking for her. Kent gave me like 100 dead queens that I've still got in a bottle over there, so I have plenty of queens to make a lure if I want it. I was just trying to be prudent. And, oh, there she is. Use every bit that was given to me. Okay. Yeah. She's definitely small. There she is. Another green dot. Okay, this time I'm not going to be an idiot, and I'm going to set her over here. Or I can't even accidentally sweep her up. All right, well, let's get these bees washed, shall we? This is a God's plenty. That's more than 300. I'm not gonna put every bee in there. Let's see what the survey says. So, both colonies, queen right. And that is exactly what I saw with the other two colonies that I looked at out in the field that I didn't bring my camera and record. It's exactly what I saw. Same thing. Dead queen in the middle of the tiny little cluster. Tons of food everywhere. No obvious signs of disease. But of course, I want to do the mite washes just to double check. Let's see here. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. with I guess, one respect, that makes me feel better because by God, I certainly try to kill mites. I mean, I use formic and I use thymol and I use, Lord knows I hit them with plenty of oxalic acid throughout the fall and even into the winter. This is going to be a Kent Williams question because I don't know. I think he's going to tell me queen failure, but why would you? I mean, 13 failed queens. That doesn't make sense to me. Maybe they didn't. Well, maybe they didn't mate very well. I mean, they're pretty small looking queens, right? And I know that they get slimmed down during the wintertime. But maybe they were just poorly mated and they ran out of sperm, and when you can't keep making workers, natural attrition, the colony is going to shrink in size and eventually freeze to death and die. Yeah, there's no mites in here, guys. This is, in my non-expert opinion, neither one of these were mite kills. I just don't think they were. I've seen other beekeepers on YouTube do these mite washes post-mortem, and there'll be mites just littered in there, where it's very obvious that it was a mite kill. So I don't know, man. I don't know on this one. I'd love to hear what you all think in the comments, or let me know if I missed something, if I'm not thinking about this in the right way. I'd love to hear everyone's opinions. What's your experience with these? See, this would more jive with not finding a queen, and I found the queen in both of them. And so, because I would think that if she was failing, well, maybe they wouldn't have balled her because, I don't know. Do the bees know that there's no drones and there's no way? I would think that they would try. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Again, I'm thinking off the top of my head here. One colony that I went through that still was alive and had a few bees in it had a virgin in there. A virgin. I could tell she was a virgin, and she wasn't marked, and I typically mark all my queens. And so what did I do? Well, that colony was so small that they were about to be dead colony number 14. So I went ahead and combined them with a colony that was queen right. And I know it was queen right because I opened it up and pulled a couple frames and found the queen, and they had quite a few bees in there. And so I just dumped them in there. I just put the bees and the honey from that colony that had a virgin in there. And they will quickly dispatch that virgin. They'll kill her. But that's what I would have thought would happen, and maybe that's what happened with some of these. I would have thought, well, it's not what happened with these two, but I would have thought that they would have balled the queen, killed her if she was failing and not producing brood and laying eggs, and they would have converted one of the eggs or a couple into virgins, and then just pray like hell and try to survive the winter long enough to where those virgins could go take mating flights in the spring and come back and restart the colony. That's my best guess, guys. My best guess. That's another thing I'll ask Kent is, what does a colony do when their queen dies or fails in the middle of winter? What is their strategy? I would assume a lot of them turn into laying workers, but I'm wondering if some of them immediately recognize they're queenless if she dies, or if they try to supersede her because she's failing. I could see where they would convert a few cells to make some virgins and just hope that those fat bees, those winter bees, can survive long enough to keep the cluster warm enough to make it into the spring and wait for the virgins to go on their mating flight. That's just me thinking out loud. Yeah, so I think that's it. Head scratcher, right? I don't know. I'm just kind of telling you what I think my best guess is. But, nevertheless, I'm always learning. I always try to learn. And whenever I look at dead outs and stuff, you're learning, right? try to do better next year. Is it disappointing? Well, heck yeah, it's disappointing. I was really hoping to have 20 colonies coming into spring, and now it's looking like best case scenario, I'm going to have the same number that I had last year. And so once again, I'm looking at a very mediocre to below average honey crop. And it's frustrating because the demand is way more than I can supply, even if I had a perfect winter and 100% success rate, and all 24 of them or 22 of them came out of winter successfully. So, but I'm not going to stop trying. I did text Kent and asked, his opinion on the first 3 that I lost. And he did say, as much as you can, it's important, and I think this is what I'm going to try to do. Maybe it's a mistake I made. You want your queens laying as long into the fall and into the winter as they possibly can. And so rather than feed heavy 2-to-1 syrup, which I was switching to in fall, depending on the colony's weights, but if they're looking good and there's enough weight there, I'm going to feed a little lighter than 1-to-1, which will stimulate and trigger sort of a fall flow, like when we get that goldenrod and the aster, and pray that the queens just keep laying and laying those fat bees, just laying and laying, so that I can get that population as high as possible, as late as possible, so those fat bees and that winter cluster is large enough to make it through the 2 to 3 months of cold that we have here. That's my plan. Other than that, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And maybe I'm not. Maybe I am. I'm just saying, like, Mother Nature's gonna Mother Nature, right? And sometimes you can do everything right and your bees still die. That's just life, So that's what I'm gonna try to do different though this coming fall, is feed slower, not, the frame feeders that, like Dave was pointing out, can dump a tremendous amount of syrup into the colony at once. But as you can clearly see, they were not honey bound. There was plenty of room for these queens to lay in here still. And especially for the winter time, when I've seen in the winter when a colony just has one side of one frame brood this big, and that's it. So it's not like they need like 7 frames of brood during the winter. But yeah, that's what I plan to do, a slower, less than 1-to-1 stream of syrup to continue to simulate a fall flow to keep those queens laying. So that's my plan. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it somewhat beneficial, educational at the least. But I think that's it for this one. So God bless you and your bees. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next one.